Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the fifth episode of the Two-Footed Tackle podcast. I'm your host, Aris Damatakos, and I'm joined by a very special guest, mate. Pom, do you want to introduce yourself?
You're right, everyone. How you doing? Thanks for having me. I've been following the Two-Footed podcast with a bit of interest. I've enjoyed this. It's nice to have a bit of a round ball in our lives. So excited to get on to this.
Appreciate you coming on, mate. So just quickly, for those who don't know, you give us a bit about yourself, just for a quick second.
Well, people know me as the English guy that loves a little bit of the egg-shaped ball AFL. So you'll see me on Blue Abroad. Have my own channel, Pommy, where we cover all sports. Just a bit of a sports boffin, really. I just love anything that involves scoring two people or two teams. So yeah, I'm a sports mentalist, really. But yeah, round ball obviously is my native game.
There you go, mate. You come to the right place if you want to speak round ball. We're all about it here. Yeah. There's a lot to go through. I think the January transfer window on the Premier League side of things has gone absolutely bonkers in the last couple of days. So we're going to speak about that. We're going to speak about some AFCON, which is getting to the business end of it now, which is really exciting to see. A bit of who went into footed, which is very serious this week. It's not something we should laugh about. And then we'll give some Prem predictions as well, as we're in the halfway point of the season. So we'll give some thoughts on how the end of the season might shape up. Now, let's start, as we always start, with some Australian football. Happened on Tuesday night, the Big Blue, Melbourne Victory versus Sydney FC. It finished 2-2. Now, as a Victory supporter, I was very content with the result in the way it panned out. I think we played well, but Sydney just had that bit of quality up front and just got the goals when they needed to. They were very clinical. Pom, what were your thoughts on that game?
Oh, it was a good advert for A-League football because it was a real open game. I think when you watch the A-League, that's the biggest difference between the European ones. I think the gulf of class isn't as big as it is in some of the European leagues, particularly for the fans who watch like La Liga, League One in France. There's a massive gap between the best three sides. I thought this was a real good open game. I thought that the Rojas pass was an absolute wonderful free-flowing team move as well, which you don't often associate with the A-League. It's kind of the forgotten league, isn't it, in world sport?
Like that Rojas pass to that Falami goal was really good to see. Ben Falami has come on leaps and bounds since last season. He's proved it, and he proved it as well in the FA Cup semi-final on Saturday, how good he can be. And for a pretty lanky player, he's standing, I think, over 6 foot. He's got really good feet, really technically gifted. And do you think maybe that's like an avenue where Australian players, because he obviously went to Ipswich in England, do you reckon that's an avenue where young Australian players can aspire to go to and then come back and dominate over here?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you look, particularly in the UK, we have a great relationship with young Aussie players. Like when I was a kid, you had Viduka, you had Kewell, these two guys that no one had ever heard of. I remember when Liverpool had Kewell and people laughing, going, "Oh, Aussies can't play football. Are they what are they on about? This young kid's going to tear the game up." And he was impressed. There's a few European players now. You know, you've got Rogic at Celtic. He went down there. He did all right. I think that's an avenue. Like me as a Rangers fan, I remember the young Craig Moore, one of the best centre-backs I've ever seen. And I remember Celtic fans giving us stick for signing an Australian centre-back, saying, did Rangers think they were playing rugby? So I think there's the opportunity there, particularly in the lower leagues, because the Championship is so competitive now. I would say the Championship is in the top 20 leagues in Europe for competitiveness, but there's huge opportunity just with the nature of the beast. All teams are looking to try and find the next big thing.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. And I think that blueprint's been set with Falami, who was obviously started his career in Australia, went to the UK, he's come back, and it took him maybe a year to acclimatise to the league again, but he's really come on leaps and bounds. And I think that's a good segue onto the FA Cup semi-final. Obviously, Victory played again. They won 4-1 against Wellington. despite the scoreline, it was a little bit less convincing. It took a couple of late goals to really seal it, but that sets up the FA Cup final between Central Coast and Melbourne Victory at Amy Park. Pom, do you have any thoughts on that? Are you aware?
I am, yeah. I did see the back end of the Melbourne Victory versus Phoenix. I do think that was the second half. It was probably the least convincing 4-1. I think you've nailed that. It probably flattered Melbourne in the end because I think it was mainly massive defensive lapses from Wellington, really over exceptional attacking, free-flowing football from Melbourne. But it should be a good final because I think Central Coast, the games I've checked out this year of them, they have their habit of being unconvincing as well. So it's a massive turnaround from Victory from last year, though, isn't it? Like, the writing was on the wall and they've done phenomenally well to make a final and be super competitive this year.
Yeah, it's good to see because obviously a little bit of bias, but Victory are one of the powerhouses of Australian football, and you need them doing well. You need them playing well for the league to really have that bit of impotence, and have that real integrity with it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, they're a brand name, aren't they? I mean, a brand name. It's like any sport. You want to see the big clubs up and around. Like even United, people hate United, but for me, I think the Premier League lacks validity without United being in the top four. You want United, Man City, Chelsea all fighting for them top spots, and it's the same in the A-League. You want the best teams top three.
100%. I think let's move on to the international football because it is obviously international break, and at the time of recording, Australia have not played Oman yet, so we'll touch on that a bit later. But they did play Vietnam. They did win 4-0, and it was obviously very convincing. It was a dominant display from start to finish. Australia weren't in too much danger. One player who stood out for me, Pommy, you might not like him, Tom Rogic, the Celtic boy. I thought he dominated proceedings, and he really dictated the tempo of the game, playing as at number 10, and he really dominated the game. Was that something you're not surprised with? Obviously, as a Rangers fan, you've probably seen a bit of Rogic throughout the year. Are you not surprised by the way he can dominate games with it?
I'm not surprised. I think he's a very talented footballer, and I think Neil Lennon used him horrifically, which was a pleasure as a Rangers fan. I think he's a very solid player, and I think we'll probably touch on Celtic a bit later, but Ange, I think, has really, even just watching Celtic and him play for Celtic, he's giving him some freedom. You can see he's playing with confidence, and that's what he's capable of. He is probably a player that if I was an Everton or even a Newcastle, he's the kind of player you look at because he is the guy I think waiting to make the next step. He's on that precipice where he's too good for the Scottish League probably. Is he looking to one of the big leagues to make his name? But that's what he's capable of. He single-handedly tore Vietnam apart. And it's okay saying Vietnam aren't an established football side. It's a fair call. But at the end of the day, he showed his class there. And I think he would have done that against any of the sides in the Asian conference. I think he's a very, very talented footballer.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and it's really taken him a while in his career to really kick on and to really show his class. But it's very exciting as an Australian to see how he can just turn games on its head and really dominate. Moving on, let's move on to some AFCON now. It's getting into the business end of the tournament. We've got our two semi-finals set. It's Burkina Faso versus Senegal and Cameroon versus Egypt. Pom, your thoughts on those two matchups?
Well, I mean, the Cameroon-Egypt one just instantly excites you, doesn't it? Cameroon have the two leading scorers in AFCON, but I think Cameroon haven't been the most convincing side when you watch them play. They seem to get the job done, but you kind of look at them and you think, how are they scoring so many goals? Especially in that game in the quarters where they played with no established goalkeeper and they only managed to score two. Egypt, obviously, when you've got Salah in your side, you've always got a chance. And I think that's the tasty one. The Burkina Faso game versus Senegal, the brain says Senegal, but, Burkina Faso, they just keep getting the job done. That win against Tunisia was really impressive, I thought.
Yeah.
because they were outgunned and they're a strong team playing together.
Yeah. Burkina Faso were really I said Ghana in my predictions earlier on about a dark horse. Obviously, they went out in the group stage, so that didn't pan out well. But I was looking at Burkina Faso as well, and they don't have any stars in their team, whereas obviously Egypt have Salah and all these type of players. But Edmund Tapsoba, their centre half, has really come on leaps and bounds. He's still only 22 years old, and he's leading that nation in a major tournament very well. And I think even if they don't get through the next round, which I think Senegal should go through, I think they've just got enough quality. But I think this tournament he's really announced himself on the world stage. And I think it's really good to see a young player playing for his nation and really dominating like he is.
Yeah, it's the old adage as well that, you know, when you see a good team play together, you don't need stars. A few EPL clubs fall in that category as well. That, you know, you might have stars, but if you haven't got togetherness, you've got nothing. I think Burkina Faso really empathise that. It's them team, that's 11 blokes playing together for each other. Senegal, obviously, they'll have the star quality, don't they? Ismaili Sarr, he's been brilliant in the AFCON as well. He scored the other week. So it's a tough job, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that go to extra time and penalties. I think Burkina Faso are really hard to break down, and Senegal have got the star quality. But like you say, that back four, that's Burkina Faso play, that they don't make mistakes. They play together.
Yeah. So predictions for the two semi-finals, and we'll give a final prediction as well. What are you looking at?
I think Senegal will win, Egypt will win, and I think the Salah effect. I think he's a big game player. I think he might fire them to the win.
Yeah, well, it will be Salah versus Mane in that. If that final was to eventuate, I've got it Senegal versus Egypt as well, but I reckon Senegal just have that little bit of class that Egypt potentially have, but I think Senegal will just pip them in the final. But I've been wrong throughout the tournament, so who knows? Maybe it'll be Burkina Faso, Cameroon. No one really knows. Moving on now to England, and because there's a lot to go through in the January transfer window. We're recording this on the 31st of January, so it's deadline day, and last night everything was popping off, signings left, right and centre. So I've got a couple of signings to go through. Starting off with the team that interested me the most was Newcastle. Now, obviously, they did sign Chris Wood and Kieran Trippier, who have already settled in a little bit. But they got Dan Burn from Brighton and Bruno Guimaraes from Olympique Lyon. For me, that Guimaraes signing has really shocked me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I have enjoyed Newcastle's transfer window because a good mate of mine, Jamie, he's a massive Geordie. And when they had this takeover, he was telling me they were going to get Mbappe. Yeah. And then it went to Martinez. And then it went to Mbolo. And when they signed Chris Wood, I couldn't stop laughing because I was like, that's a big come down. You've got Mbappe and you end up with Chris Wood, who's just the New Zealand Peter Crouch. But the Bruno signing, I'm shocked that Tottenham or a club of that ilk haven't gone in him, because I think Bruno, when you watch, I watch a lot of the French league. I enjoy the French league because it's just an all-star cast versus some other teams in PSG. Yeah, and he stands out, Bruno. He gives me Bruno Fernandes vibes when I watch him play. He's real hard-working, technically gifted. He can thread a pass. Probably lacks Bruno's goal scoring, but I think that is an elite signing. Like, if I was a Geordie, you've got yourself one other player. And watching him and John Joe Shelvey play together, you've got Shelvey's muscle, getting the ball back, Bruno's class. They've got the midfield now to play that Eddie Howe game. Yeah.
Like, I was shocked that United didn't go for him, to be honest, because for me, he was a player that they needed. That real, solid, hardworking, has that bit of class about him, but he's like a team first player, and I feel like United really could have used him. But did Newcastle do enough to stay in the league? Because they're in a bit of a hole. But did they bring in the right players?
For me, when I look at Newcastle, and I said it when they finally did sack Steve Bruce, which I was surprised he was there for so long anyway. That I think Eddie Howe is probably, in my opinion, just behind Potter as the best English manager. I think Howe plays a style of football that wins games. It's a very progressive style. I think they've done enough. I think watching Newcastle, I don't think they'll go down. I'm not a big fan of the Chris Wood signing. I understand it. I would have personally, if I was Eddie Howe, I would have gone for players like Ivan Toney, who, if we do fall down, I know they can do the business in the Championship to get us straight back up. Yeah. But I do really like what they're building. I do like what I'm seeing. I think Newcastle's starting to be a tough team to break down, which is what you've got to do in this league. And I think the quality they've brought in is enough. Like Byrne, not many people get excited about him, but he's been very solid. Yeah. For Brighton as well. He's a solid, honest footballer, and he's an upgrade on what they've got. I think he's building a good team, togetherness, and when you've got Saint Maxim as well, you've got the quality there. Yeah. I think they've got enough to stay up.
Yeah, I think they addressed the areas that they needed to, like that midfielder and like another solid defender were the real keys for them, and obviously Trippier as well. So like bringing that extra bit of protection for them. I think I agree with you. I think they've just done enough to sneak through, but it's going to be interesting because, well, they need to make sure that those players hit the ground running because there's not long left. We're halfway through the year, and they need to acclimatise to the league, get used to the system. So it'll be very interesting. Now, moving on to a little bit more exciting transfers. Probably the most in-demand player in the summer, I reckon, Dusan Vlahovic. He's snubbed the Premier League and has jumped ship from Fiorentina to Juventus. Now, was that the right move, do you reckon?
Well, I mean, it was a surprise, wasn't it? Because he was linked with just about every Premier League club. But you understand the Juve pull. Do you know what I mean? You understand the Serie A. Like, invariably, you get who you want in that league if you're one of the top clubs. I was surprised that, Arsenal didn't make a bigger play for him. I think, with what's going on with Abba, Lacazette, I think is hit and miss. I thought he suited what Arsenal were trying to build. And whether that's Arsenal being Arsenal and trying to get the best deal for the club as opposed to throwing money at the target, I don't know. But it doesn't surprise me because, I mean, it's probably the most common stepping stone from in Italy. Someone goes from a top 4 club to a bigger club and then they go elsewhere in Europe. Great signing for them, though. Great signing.
Yeah, I agree. I think he obviously knows the Italian league. He has banged goals there already. Do you think this is the end for him in terms of like his transfer business, or do you see him moving to a Premier League team or maybe to La Liga or somewhere else in the future?
I think if he bangs in the goals, I would not be surprised to see in a year, maybe 2 years, another EPL club come in looking for him. Obviously, this is going to be one of them cases that whatever Arsenal offered in 2 years' time, if he does well, it's going to be double the money. Yeah. So it's going to be one of them cases, where we probably talk about why didn't Arsenal pay the extra 5 million then to get the finished product. But I could see him, I'd imagine he seems a competitive man. So I'd imagine he'd want to do it in one of the big leagues as well. And there is still that stereotype. If you don't do it in the Premier League, you can't really say you've done it anywhere. Yeah. So he's got the game for the Premier League for me. He's big, he's strong, he's good on both feet. I'd have no problem with him in a Premier League team. But I am shocked. It's a desperate need for Arsenal. And they're letting them slip through the claps. And so are Tottenham, both doing the North London thing of going for the right players but not getting the business done.
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. It's a perfect segue to Tottenham, who were obviously after a couple of players, but they ended up getting Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur from Juventus. Now, this came out of the blue for me because obviously they were after Luis Diaz, and then Liverpool snubbed him from under their noses later on. Obviously, Adama Traore snubbed them to go to Barca. What are your thoughts on that? Was it a panic buy late on in the window, or do you reckon there's method to the madness?
Well, they've kind of got Audi versions of what they were originally going for. I mean, the Diaz signing for Liverpool, absolute phenomenal player.
Yeah.
Like he's class, his pace. He's a Adama Traore with the end product.
Yeah.
He's got that lightning pace, but he also provides assists and he can score himself. Spurs are a weird one because I don't like Spurs, but I feel sorry for them because they are a side that if they didn't worry about balancing the books all the time, they'd be a top 3, top 2 club. And when you've got Conte as the coach, I worry Conte won't stay there because they're not backing him. Obviously, he's identified the players and they've gone out and got similar players, but they're not quite them players. That's my worry because I think Tottenham are building something special. I'm watching Spurs and the Conte effect is evident.
Yeah.
Which makes me ask the question, why does Levy not just back him in?
Yeah.
Interesting to see.
So, yeah, Adama Traore, I think he was the player that Spurs needed, and it's surprising that they didn't break the bank for him because he's that real quality in terms of the positional quality that they needed. And is that something that Conte could get frustrated with Daniel Levy about because he doesn't seem to back any of his managers?
It's classic Spurs. They have an elite level manager, and it seems to come to a transfer window. Pochettino, he got them to a Champions League final, and then that next year they spent nothing to go up the next level. Jose started to get the results. It was obvious what he wanted. Daniel Levy never got it, and now, for me, Conte is in the bracket of Pep Guardiola. He's that good, and for them to have to settle for the players they've got over the players Conte has identified is a concern for me. I don't think he'll stick around, and I've got a sneaky feeling that he could be the dark horse for the United job. I think United made a huge mistake not going for him and trying to live the dream with Ole for too long. And when Conte was there, and Spurs obviously did the brave thing, sacked the coach and got him in, I wouldn't be surprised that a big club comes calling for him end of the year.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue to United because obviously there's been some outgoings there and they haven't brought anyone in. Were you thinking that surely they're going to bring some reinforcements in January, especially considering how lackluster this year has gone for them?
United just absolutely balmy. I think Ralph has done a great job. He's the guy that I wanted as interim. Hopefully the Ten Hag deal's already done. It looks like Ralph pushing for him massively. I'm shocked that the number 6 hasn't been addressed. I really am. I think as well when Zakaria, he wants to leave Mönchengladbach. His agent has confirmed. For me, that is obviously what United need. It wouldn't cost a lot to break the bank to get him as well. I think you'd be looking at about 20, 30 million. He's the old school number 6 as well, sits in front of his back 4. For me, it's an obvious deal because it's the future there. I think when you look at Zakaria, he is the kind of guy that will build your team around, and he will stay there for any game style as well, whoever there. And you look at Ten Hag, he likes that number 6 to sit in front of his back 4. Doesn't surprise me though. I don't know what's going on at United. There's problems off the field, on the field. That team is a team that I really think United have to start selling. I'm shocked Pogba's not gone. Like for me, he would be the number one thing that Ralph needs to do is sell Pogba this window because I think that's holding the club back massively.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think Pogba will end up going, but the sooner you get him out, the better, in my opinion. The reason why I brought United up in terms of their outgoings was because Donny van de Beek is off to Everton, and Frank Lampard is joining him. Now, is Frank Lampard the answer to Everton's seemingly never-ending problems?
it's a bold call. I mean, Rooney turned Everton down through his agent. He confirmed that he declined the interview because he's got a job to do at Derby, which full commending Wayne Rooney there, because that guy hasn't been paid for 2 months. The loyalty is phenomenal. I thought Wayne Rooney was the answer for me. I thought Rooney it would have been my number one choice if I was Everton. I think just that charisma around the dressing room, it unites them. Frank Lampard, my jury's still out on Frank Lampard. When I thought he did wonderful at Chelsea. I thought he was hard done by Chelsea. And I think all the success Chelsea are having now is partly down to Lampard's willingness to play the kids. The fruits of his labour now have been topped up with tactical skill.
Yeah.
I just don't think Everton have the players to play Lampard's game. They haven't really got much youth coming through. There's not much really you can go there. I would have looked, if you were desperate, Sam Allardyce is the obvious answer at Everton. Try and get you into the Premier League, keep Premier League football, and then maybe go for another coach. I think Lampard's never been in a relegation scrap, and it takes a special kind of manager to galvanise them, because they are in a world of pain, Everton.
Yeah. Do you reckon maybe it's a bit too much pride on like that Everton, like the faithful and the board have, that they don't see themselves in a relegation scrap? They just see themselves as like a mid-table club in a bad run of form, and they're living in a bit of like a delusional world where they're not actually realising the dire situation that they're in.
Probably. I mean, it's a tough thing looking at Everton, because they're that nothing club. They're like Spurs. They're kind of like that club that is the best of the rest. Yeah. And you're waiting for something to happen to make them go the next level. And they never seem to. They're like the Geelong of the football world. They go so far, but you know they're never going to do the last bit that matters. I'm sure. I think Frank Lampard is a huge risk. I think it's a risk. I like Lampard and what he's about, but I don't think Everton are signing the players required to play his game plan. And I think Lampard plays such a specific way that he needs a window to fix his list, where he's not going to. So it's going to be interesting where Lampard goes with this.
I fully agree. Obviously, having watched his football for a season and a half, it's very he needs his players, because it's very specific roles. I think that's why you saw players like Mason Mount really just go to another level under Frank Lampard, because he knows his players that he wants. He knows how they play, and he knows the roles that he wants them to play. And I don't think he's that type of manager that can come in and be that instant fix. So it definitely will be interesting.
Mate, couldn't agree more. I think it's a huge risk for me. If I was Everton, I would not want him. I would not want Lampard. I'd want either an established relegation specialist and tide us over to the end of the year, or you have Lampard at the start of the year, where you've got 3 months of window to him analyse the list. Big job for both, because I'd say this is Lampard's last job ever at elite level. If it goes wrong, he's going to have to drop down the leagues.
Yeah, I reckon it could be that as well. And I think that's a perfect segue to our half-season Prem predictions. Now, I say that because who are in your bottom three by the end of the season, based on what we've seen so far? Are Everton in there?
I could see it. I really could see Everton being there. It's going to be, I think it'll come down to really the start. The next 3 games under Lampard will tell us everything we need to know. But I do think Burnley and Watford are down, and my brain's telling me Norwich will go down. I do think Norwich will start having a blip of form.
Yeah, I have the exact same bottom three as you. I think Burnley won too many seasons that they've managed to scrape a 17th place finish or whatever. Watford, I don't see it. I think it doesn't work at that level. The knee-jerk reactions of sacking managers doesn't work, and I think Norwich just don't have that quality. I think they're a little bit too breakable in high pressure moments. Now let's move up the league. Who? I think we're assuming that Man City win the league, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be very hard for Liverpool and Chelsea to catch them. Even though I have to say, City haven't impressed me. I just think they've been less worse.
Yeah, fair enough.
I watched Chelsea play. I watched City. I think Chelsea actually, and you'll love this, are the best football side in the country at the moment. I think they are the best team. I just think they've had results and brain fades at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Where City, for some reason, when they've had the brain fades, teams haven't taken their chances, which I think they look more vulnerable than Liverpool and Chelsea at times. I think the method is there to beat them. I just don't think the quality has been there to beat them.
Yeah, I think we saw in that Southampton game that they had chances and they just couldn't put them away. And I'm also assuming that that Liverpool and Chelsea round out second and third, right?
Yeah, I think that's a lock. I think the top three is stabilised.
Yeah. All right. Who gets your fourth place? And with that, who finishes in the Europa League?
I've got a feeling that Spurs sneak fourth. I think they've got the quality, and I think Conte and Pep. I think the wonderful thing about Conte is his side is shit. It's probably the worst side he's ever coached, like skill-wise. But that system, it wins you games. It wins you games. It's tough to break down. I think West Ham will sneak fifth, and I've got a feeling United will be sixth.
Oh, okay. So Arsenal, another rebuild for them, or?
No, I think I'm harsh on Arsenal, but I do think Arsenal have done the right thing, and I do wish United had done the Arsenal model of strip it back, get rid of your stars, get a coach in that you believe in, and back him to build something. I think Arsenal won't be too far away. I think they're one more window away. They seem to do their business in summer. They don't like January, and I think Arteta is the product of Pep. Pep doesn't like to do January window either. He doesn't believe in it. So I think Arteta, it doesn't surprise me Arteta's not going for players. I wouldn't panic. I think he's got the perfect side. I think that side is a really good young side. They give it a go. I just think them young legs are going to fade towards the end of the year in a long season. But I think next year, I wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal top four.
Yeah, it's one season too early for them, I reckon. I just don't think the youth is as experienced as they need to be to battle this type of scenario. I've got the same three clubs in my top, well, in my fourth to sixth, but I've got West Ham scraping top four. It's just there's something about the way they play. Nothing really seems to faze them. And I don't know. I would love to see it because I feel like there's always one shock result in the top six. There's always one shock place. Whether it was like Leicester a couple of seasons ago or like Southampton, however many years back. But I reckon West Ham will just have enough. I don't think United will have clicked to Rangnick's style yet for it to like have a real sustained run at top four. I think Spurs. I think the team will let Conte down, and I just think at West Ham everything's going to click by the time they need it to, and they're going to get top four. Now, moving on? What's a headline that by the end of the season we'll see? Like, what's the back page saying at the end of the season?
Well, I think if your predictions are right and West Ham finish fourth and United finish sixth, it would be that did United make a mistake with Moyes? Because what West Ham have done is I said it at the time when United brought in Moyes. You've got to, if you give him a 5-year deal, you've got to back him. You've got to back him and understand it's going to get worse before it gets better. Moyes and Fergie, two different coaches, two different styles. And what Fergie did with that United side, go back and watch that United side. It was piss poor. It was Fergie doing Fergie things. And Moyes got the results you'd expect of that 11 players. I think Moyes would be that guy. I think he will be a guy that, maybe the top four look at. Because what he does with West Ham, you're spot on. They're hard to break down. They don't give up. They don't give any respect to the big four clubs. They ran City close. They gave Liverpool a game. They don't fear anyone. And it just shows you what good coaching does and a good system. And I think Moyes will be the forgotten hero.
Yeah, I think that he's got that side playing a really just solid football, really efficient football, and I reckon I do think he can translate to a side with better players. It's just about managing egos, which is my only concern. But he's an experienced enough man, I reckon, to get that under control.
Spot on.
Now, I think we're done with that portion. Now, for the only segment on this podcast, who went in two-footed. Now, normally it is a gimmick. It is a funny segment, but I feel like it's important to talk about it because of the high-profile nature of it. A lot of you would have seen. It came out yesterday, as we're recording this, that Mason Greenwood has been accused of sexual assault, I think domestic abuse as well, and rape on his former partner. There's been obviously photos circulating the internet, an audio clip circulating the internet. It's absolutely abhorrent what has been accused of him, and it's really the worst of the worst, isn't it?
I mean, you're innocent until proven guilty, but based on the evidence alone and the reaction, and also the girl in question's dad made a statement as well this morning as well, which pretty much sewed it away that it is fact. United retracted their original statement and stood him down, which is another clear indication that United know. I think this shows the greater picture as well. You look at the reaction, particularly from the media, in some parts of the media saying things like Mason Greenwood, young players, ruined his career.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he hasn't ruined his career. Think about that poor young girl and what he's done there. Like, if Mason Greenwood has done this, United, as a fan of them, have to sack him. Have to sack him. I don't want him playing again. If Ched Evans got accused of rape, got made guilty, which then turned out to be false, and his career was gone until he was 30.
Yeah.
We have to take a stand. We have to take a stand. And talented footballer, but if you break the law of this severity, especially with United's foundations that push this, they have to make a message that this is not acceptable. And some of the comments make me sick. Like, why don't United educate their players? You can't hide behind that.
Yeah.
It's a simple human instinct not to do it. You have to make the statement for the young kids out there that this is not acceptable. Yes, it's a mistake, but it's a pretty big mistake, and he needs to pay the price.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with your statements. Obviously, Mason Greenwood is the high-profile name, but there obviously is a victim, and my heart goes out to her and her family, because obviously this is the absolute worst a human can go through. And I think this shows how we idolize some players, yet we don't really know them at all. And I was completely shocked and completely mortified when I saw the photos and I read what has been accused of happening. But like you said, a jury of 10-year-olds could probably have this open and shut within 10 minutes. So
when you hear that voice message as well, that's shocking. The worst. That is a human being that probably deserves to lose the right to be a human being, because that is a sick, twisted individual. And players have been banned for less. These accusations, rape, domestic abuse, they are huge. And when you add that voice message to it, that's not a guy that has had a moment of rage. That's cold and calculated. And I guarantee it's a repeat offence. This isn't the first time. You look at what he did on duty in Iceland as well.
Yeah.
It shows that this kid has no sense of decency. And I really hope United take it on the chin and say, okay, we could sell him and make 30 million, but this is bigger than that. The statement is bigger, because if you start letting him off and giving him gradients, We talk about rape culture and the responsibility men have. I saw that this week in the male reaction to it.
Yeah.
They've got to make a statement that this is not acceptable. We don't have this in professional sport, and get rid of him, let him go off, think about what he's done. And if he comes back and works his way up through the leagues 5, 6, 7 years after he's done the prison time he needs to do, so be it. But for now, United have to make a stand, and I hope United make a stand before he's guilty.
Yeah.
Before he's guilty, and actually say, look, we're washing our hands with it. This isn't acceptable.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, I think, like you said, innocent till proven guilty. But the only response is sack him immediately. Like, I think you have to acknowledge it because it's so high profile. But you sack him, you say, like, you try and be the club that you are meant to be in this case, and don't shy away from it. Don't try and skirm your way out of it. Take it on the chin, like you said, and really address the facts, because it was quite shocking. Realizing what had happened and figuring it out, it was abhorrent.
I think for a club like Manchester as well, local boy Mason Greenwood, hero to many, comes from the council estate. He's done it the hard way. He's the proper working class hero for a young boy, someone that's grown up in the poorer areas and got to where he is through hard work and endeavour. If you don't make a statement from him, that is a huge, huge warning sign for them young boys. Young boys need to look up to someone. And I think when you've got David De Gea, Cristiano Ronaldo this morning unfollowing him.
Yeah, Marcus Rashford as well.
That's a clear sign to me that them players are around him every day. They'll know what he's capable of. It's got to be done. And it's harsh, but he needs to be fed to the wolves and deal with the consequences of his actions and not be protected by a big conglomerate like United, because there's been cases in the Premier League. These big clubs can make these problems go away. Yeah. And I think for the sake of humanity, United need to pull their support away from him and say, look, we're not going to influence this decision. We stand with the lady in question and what's right.
Yeah. Do you also think that United need to publicly denounce him as a character, but as a person within the United walls? Do they need to make a public statement to denounce him and what he's done?
Yeah, I think they have to fire him. They have to terminate his contract and say that this is not acceptable. We've done this because this is not what our club stands for. It's not the image we project, and it's not what we expect of our footballers. And United has been a pillar of the English community for 20, 30 years. Going right back to the Busby Babes, they are in English folklore. They have to lead the way here of what happens. You've got Man City dilly-dallying with Mendy, which I think is just ridiculous, because Mendy every week there's a new lady coming out of the woodwork saying he's done this. Like, that guy's charges are going up the longer he's in prison. Yeah, you've got to just make the statement, say, look, this is what we stand for as a club, and set a precedent to the rest of the team of what's expected, that we won't accept this. Because otherwise it gets to the stage where that United name can kind of disassociate it and make it look less worse than it is. These are huge accusations, and if you or I had done it, we'd be in jail. So he has to take the punishment. It's
also becoming increasingly concerning the rate at footballers are being caught up in these like shocking scandals. Obviously, like you said, with Mendy. And do you think there's something systematically wrong with the way young footballers have been brought up in terms of just the culture around it? That obviously this is on a personal level, this is the worst thing. But when money and fame and the feeling of being invincible come together, does that just make for a recipe of disaster?
I genuinely think it's never changed for maybe 100 years. I think what has changed, and you look at like the Harvey Weinstein case, I think what's happened now is women are more empowered. Women are more strong. Women are more brave. And there's a lot easier way for women to put the message out there than before, when it was a load of men in the press box who could just make it go away. I think now women are in position to make these statements. Social media is a wonderful thing because now no one can edit that. Women can get, like, I reckon 30 years ago, if this young girl had gone to the Daily Mail, someone would have paid off a journalist, paid off her, the story would have disappeared and we'd never hear about it. Yeah. I think that's the only thing that's changed. And I think this is a warning sign now to these young players that we do put them on a pedestal. Like Mason Greenwood last year was compared to CR7. And I kept saying it at the time, what's he done? He's scored a couple of good goals and he's broken into the first team with no one around him.
Yeah,
it's not impressive. It's the nature of the beast. I think now what we're seeing is people are being called out for their actions. So this is now a job for the FA and the Premier League to make statements and say, we're not 1980s football anymore. We're 2022 football. We don't stand for this. There is a degree of social responsibility these players have got. I don't want them to be angels, but I'm asking for basic principles. Like, this is a serious, serious offence. This isn't going out on the beers trading Friday morning. This is serious, and they need to stamp it out.
Yeah, fully agree. I think you've hit the nail on the head with everything you've said there. Obviously, our hearts go out to the victim involved because the worst thing that could possibly happen to a human. Okay, moving on to the week's football ahead. Now, I didn't realise this until I woke up this morning, but it is the Old Firm derby coming up. How are the nerves?
Yeah, they're there. They're there. Ange, I've got to say, I hate to do it. I love the Ange appointment from Celtic. Good mate of mine, Nath, he's my best mate. We grew up together back home in Scotland. He's a huge Celtic fan. It's his one issue. Other than that, great bloke. But he hated the Ange appointment, but I said he's probably the manager they need because Celtic keep doing Celtic things and living in the past. Like Neil Lennon gets that job every 5 minutes. Yeah. I like Ange. He's progressive. He plays a really attacking game plan. For me, he's the next Steven Gerrard from our league. He'll be a guy that I think the Premier League will snip at because he plays modern day technical football. It's very nice to watch, and I hate watching Celtic. On the other side, though, we've got Giovanni Van Bronckhorst now, revolutionised how Rangers play. We drew last week, though, which was a bit of a disappointment against Ross County, but great game on paper. Yeah. And obviously, Ange has got that first bit of silverware, which is the hardest thing to do. But Celtic being backing in Ange with his signings, it's going to be a great game. It's a tough game as well because Celtic are a bit of a different beast than the last time we played.
Yeah. Aren't your 2 points clear, aren't you? So if Celtic get up, the title race is turned on its head. What's your prediction heading into it?
I think we'll win. I think it'll be 2-1. I think we've still got enough quality. I think we've recruited really well as well in January. Diallo, what a debut! 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
I reckon United are regretting that as well now with Mason Greenwood because I've been saying for ages Diallo should play in the first team. I think he's a phenomenal footballer. I think we've got enough, but I think it's going to be one hell of a game. I don't think it's going to be like the last time we played where it was very easy for us. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think we're going to have a vintage Old Firm as well because what I love about Ange and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, very tackle heavy, very physical. I think we're going to see a yellow card fest, which is what you want. You want to see Rangers and Celtic hurt each other. You don't want to see good football. It's really about that fight, and we're going to see that this week.
Is it at Ibrox or is it?
It is, yeah. So we've got it's going to be a great game. I think I'm looking forward to this one very, very much because I think whoever wins this big call, I think goes on and wins it.
So it's going to be very interesting to watch. Now, obviously I mentioned that Australia versus Vietnam, Australia versus Oman on Tuesday night, I think. And it's a must-win game for Australia because this is the third last game of the qualifying for the World Cup. And in the next in the next fixtures, we travel to Saudi Arabia and we host Japan, and they're two very tough games. So must-win match for Australia. Have you assigned yourself to any Australian football in terms of the international stage? Are you a little bit more patriotic than you were when you first came?
Yeah, I follow Australia in any sport unless they play my team. Oman, it's an easy game on paper, isn't it? But these qualifications, it doesn't matter which country you're in. If you're in Europe, if you're in Asia, Africa, South America, there's no easy games in qualification because there's always a shock. There's always that dreaded 1-1 draw. And Oman, they're outgunned here. And a draw for them is a win. So that's always the worry in qualification. So like you say, tough games coming up for Australia. It gets harder after this. They have to go away. Graham Arnold's side need the 3 points.
Yeah. I really hope we do it because I've not been alive when Australia has not qualified for a World Cup. So I want that to continue. I want to watch a World Cup with Australia in it as much as possible. We did touch on the AFCON semi-final and final predictions. FA Cup weekend, I just wrote down here, Brighton versus Tottenham is the most competitive game, we should say. Do you have any predictions for the whole tournament? May as well, since we're here.
Well, I mean, the FA Cup, probably definitely the greatest competition in the world. I think some would say bold call, but I'd say the best competition going round. I don't think there is a better competition in the world. And there's something about, isn't there, seeing these League Two, League One sides against the big boys, and invariably one of them gets sent home, which is what it's all about. I think it's what it's all about. The Brighton game you've mentioned, that is, I think, more important for Spurs than anything else, because I think this is probably their best chance of silverware. Yeah. And Conte is not the type of guy that sees fourth as a success. I think he will be looking and saying, we've got to win something. I like the United Middlesbrough game as well. I think United Middlesbrough, that'll be an entertaining fixture. Southampton Coventry as well. Coventry gone really well under Mark Robbins, and I could see that being a little bit of an excitement machine. And it'd be interesting to see how Fulham go against City. But obviously the one that we all will be watching, and Faz will hate me for this, Kidderminster Harriers entertaining West Ham. There's the shock.
Faz won't be happy if they don't win that.
But there's the shock. That's got shock written all over it. That an away day for West Ham. You never want to go to a lower league opposition's home because there's going to be a lot of people out watching that. I could see that being the worst thing for Faz's top four hopes, a draw and a replay.
Yeah, mate. Do you reckon if Kidderminster do win, do you reckon that helps West Ham a little bit? With obviously because they're still in Europe, top four as well. Is the FA Cup like the least of their worries at the moment?
I think Faz wouldn't admit it, but I think if they got knocked out of that competition, it wouldn't bother him in the terms of, like you say, they get an extra rest day. There's an extra day to prepare. This time of year, it's that catch-22 of being in these competitions because it's a long season. And we've seen, with the injuries that have happened, look at Leeds. They got decimated with injuries. And no way Leeds are 18th, 17th, 16th in the league. They're a better side than that. But injuries have decimated them. Yeah. You don't want to run the risk. That's what West Ham have got to think. So I don't think they'd be bothered if they lost. They'll obviously want to win and get knocked out by a Premier League side. But it wouldn't do their top four chances any harm.
Yeah, you're right. I think we're going to leave it at that. Pom, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. For those of you who don't know, I'm not sure where you've been, but Pommy and Oz on all the socials. Check him out. Good guy. Great content as always. Thank you all for listening, for watching the 5th episode of the TFTPod podcast. Hope stay well, stay safe. Hope the week's football treats you well, and see you next week. See you guys. Bye.
See ya.